This is going to make you question your sanity. The woke left continues its efforts to completely reshape our societies and destroy everything that it once stood for, and our public discourse is also being hit by this because they're forcing regressive conversations on us that only create additional divisions, especially when the discussion revolves around racial issues. The most recent attempt was creating blackout events, which would only welcome African American people. Piers Morgan tried to understand the motive behind such events as he had an author and gay rights activist on his show, and it became quickly apparent how wicked these people's thinking is. But before I delve deeper into this, watch the clip.
One thing that happened here, Kahindi, this is this producer of a West End show, Slave Play, which features a Games of Thrones star, Kit Harington, among the cast. It runs from end of June to end of September at the Noel Coward Theatre, and will have blackout events confirmed to be taking place on 2 of those nights. This is where 2 performances will be aimed at an all-black identifying audience that is free from the white gaze, and it follows a similar thing on Broadway in 2019. Now, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's official spokesman says restricting audiences on the basis of race would be wrong and divisive. My take on this was, I was trying to imagine if you had an all-white cast and you said, right, we're going to have an all-white identifying audience free from the black gaze, you would go absolutely apoplectic with rage.
It clearly wouldn't be the same.
Why wouldn't it be the same?
Because the problem here is, if you go to some of these shows, you will find there is an all-white audience. Unfortunately, because of the way it works, some of these places, they are almost exclusively white. And so what this is dealing with...
Just advertising it in that way, you would deem it extremely racist and offensive.
So there is a problem that you have almost all white audiences, and it doesn't feel like a safe space for black audience members or cast. And so what you're saying is trying to address this problem, let's have an all-black space.
So when you go to the theatre, if you see white...
There's no problem with all black.
To be clear, when you go to the theatre and you see white people there, you don't feel safe?
No, when I promise you go to a theatre and it's all black people, you'll feel away. I promise you, 100% promise you. Have you ever been into a theatre and it's all black?
I've been to rap concerts in America where I've been one of the few white people. Yeah,
it's different.
I thought absolutely fine, thanks.
The point is, it's different. When you go, it's different for me. When I go into these places, it's different. It doesn't feel comfortable.
But just to make it, so in answer to my question, though, that's my question. If there was an all-white identifying audience billed as the marketing that was free from the black gaze, you would say that was racist.
Because it would be racist. This is to address a specific problem.
Yeah.
There is in the cultural sector, there is all white
only
spaces.
works.
So how do you address that?
Right. So racist if it's to do with.
You're just minimising the importance of that conversation again. You're just making it a hypocritical conversation to cause an argument.
Or am I exposing a double standard?
No, there isn't a double standard.
I'm actually exposing the hypocrisy.
One of these groups is a minority and one isn't, and you always bang on. And I hate to bring this in because I don't want to have a debate about it, but you always bring in safe spaces for women, which I completely agree with, and you talk about how important that is. But then suddenly, when there's a safe space for black people, you've got an issue with it. So what's going on there?
I don't understand why
some double standards there.
Theatre is not
answer my question, please. There's some double standards.
Sorry,
in that.
you're making out that somehow black people can't go to the theatre for fear of
No,
what?
but we're having a conversation about safe spaces, and the idea is that by doing a blackout event, it will feel safer for that community to talk.
So what if I want to have
issues.
a whiteout event?
They all are white.
Well, you can join the Ku Klux Klan if you want, Piers. You're more than welcome.
So if it's a whiteout event, it's Ku Klux Klan, right? Who are the most racist group in history? I got it. One way, if it's whiteout, Ku Klux Klan.
The point is,
if it's blackout, absolutely fine.
The point is, it's already white.
You see how ridiculous this sounds?
You see how ridiculous you sound.
That's just racism with a modern touch added to it. Wasn't the whole point of the civil rights movement to stop segregating based on skin color? Creating events exclusively for any one racial group will only promote segregation and exclusion, rather than building inclusivity and unity. By the way, do subscribe for more discussions like this. While the intent might be to create a safe and supportive environment as the woke panelists were trying to justify these actions, it reinforces divisions rather than bridging gaps between different communities. Theater and the arts are powerful tools for creating dialogue and understanding among diverse groups. By limiting the audience to one racial community, opportunities for cross-cultural exchange and mutual understanding are not lost. Notice how James Barr quickly calls the reverse of a blackout event as a KKK activity? This only shows the hypocrisy of these people and how they try to go by the motto, rules for thee, not for me. Additionally, saying that you'd be threatened by being present in a room full of people from different backgrounds than yours with a smiling face on national television is beyond absurd to me. Such statements imply that people of different races pose a different threat to one another, which is not only wrong, it's also discriminatory. But I guess Kehinde Andrews has to do it in order to increase the size of his audience and later on sell his books to them.
Let's bring in Amala, the voice of common sense. Amala, I mean, just hearing these two, honestly, trying to work out in their brains, very slowly, it seems to me, the ridiculous double standard of what they're saying. You must be laughing, aren't you?
Oh, I'm laughing. I'm shaking my head. To me, this is absolutely ridiculous. It is one of the most blatantly racist things I've seen in quite some time. And it's quite literally demeaning to Black people. How insulting that you would say to Black people that they don't feel safe in a space because there are fellow white people there and they need to be safe from the white gaze. And how racist it is to white people to exclude them from being able to enjoy something like the theater. This is very reminiscent of the Jim Crow South that we experienced in America, where you had white and colored water fountains. This is the very same reality that we are now ushering in, even though we made it to a time of progress where this was no longer an issue. We are inviting it back. It is racist.
It is not the
wrong.
same. In any way, shape, or form, is this the same as Jim Crow? What you actually have in a minute is go to a show in the West End. It feels like Jim Crow already. It's already a whiteout. This is an anti-racist way.
But if white people did this, we're the KKK.
You do it all the time.
Okay.
This is the point.
Yeah. And here's
Can I
the
just speak from a
problem.
queer perspective
Here's
for a
the
second?
problem.
From a queer, what about
So
a very
as a gay-
ignorant perspective?
As a gay person,
KKK?
it's important that I am sometimes in a space of other queer people that is just queer people, so I feel safe to be myself.
You exclude
without
straight
worrying,
people like me?
okay? I would exclude you, Piers, but if you want to go to GAY with me,
I've been there, mate.
Let's go
I've been
together.
there.
Great. But listen, my point is, we need safe spaces so that we feel safe. And actually, you're talking about it being
We don't.
racist
feel
to exclude
unsafe
white
with
people.
me standing
Why are
there?
white people not making Black people feel
Do
safe?
you feel
That's the
unsafe
question.
now?
That is the question.
Do you feel unsafe now with a straight guy opposite you?
Not really, no.
Do you feel unsafe with a white guy sitting
It's
with
not
you?
about that,
It's
Piers.
about 10,000 white people
I do
saying
feel a bit
Reggie.
unsafe sat here, actually. Yes, especially with the comments. That
Well,
we
after
receive.
comparing my position to KKK,
I did not compare that. I said you could join them if you wanted that. That's what I said.
so yeah, just to be clear, if it's free from the black gaze, it's KKK. Free from the white gaze, that's
This is an
emancipation.
This is an anti-racist idea. This is what the whole point is, to address a problem.
It's actually, in its own way, it's just blatant racism.
It's not racism.
It is.
not racist.
It's excluding people on their skin colour.
No.
It's the exact opposite of what
white
Martin
people
Luther
can
King
still
said. Judge people by the content of
you
their
just a minute
character.
ago,
Let me remind you that Amal is the youngest of them all, and she does a remarkable job of calling the other two panelists out on their obvious racism. No matter how much mental gymnastics you do, you can't convince anyone that such events are not racist. Excluding people from events based on the color of their skin also raises legal and ethical issues. It directly contradicts the principles of equality and non-discrimination that many countries have codified in their laws to fight racism. Such practices not only encourage segregation and reinforce harmful stereotypes, but they also undermine the progress made toward creative, inclusive, and just societies, ultimately harming the collective goal of achieving true racial equality and unity. But I guess the woke left has a policy to capitalize and lead activist movements that seek to divide society instead of unifying. Instead of creating spaces for meaningful dialogue and understanding, such actions reinforce echo chambers and set a dangerous precedent normalizing discrimination under the guise of promoting diversity.
They're guilty of racism
Listen,
is
I
essentially
love
what
white
it is.
people,
And to
okay?
Mr.
White
Andrews'
people-
point,
some of my best friends are white, so I cannot be racist towards white people.
Okay, here's the issue with this way of thinking. You notice a disparity amongst race and you immediately attribute it to racism. Mr. Andrews says, you know, there are theaters that sometimes you go to them and there's all white people in the audience. Now, I don't know that that is actually true, but if you attribute that to racism, that is your problem. If you feel safe or unsafe in a space that contains white people, that is your problem.
I don't
it
think
is
it's
not our
racist. I think it's
responsibility.
economically racist. I think the reason that most of the audiences in the West End are white is because of an economic problem.
But it's not. I, as a black person, have attended the theater all
so
of
it's
my
not.
life.
Did you
Every
study
single black
economics?
person that has. Every black person in the UK has the very same
So why don't they?
choice to go and be in the theater.
why don't they?
And even
They
if it
can't
was
afford
because
to.
of an economic disparity, that economic disparity does not exist purely because of racism. And to attribute it purely to racism is to ignore a ton of other problems that are existing within the black community and
Can I ask a
blame
question?
white
Why
people
is it
for
then?
it.
So why is it? Because actually, you'll find in America as well, there are hugely segregated audiences for comedy, for theatre, why is that? Why is it you
They're
can
not.
literally go, yes, oh my, yes, there are. If you're saying this, that's what
To
country do you live in?
segregate-
That you cannot tell me right now. If you go see a comedy in a black community in America, it's just all black people. If you can go to see the same thing in a white community, it's all white people. Residential segregation.
Just
Why do
because-
these things happen?
So just because people tend to be with other people of their similar race does not mean that those shows are segregated. To segregate something is to exclude a group of people, which is exactly what these blackout theaters are doing. Just because you happen to attend a show that is full of black people or full of white people does not mean that there is some sort of segregation
It's just by
actively
accident.
happening. And it is a failure in your thinking. Yes,
It's just by
sometimes
accident that America is one of the most
sometimes
segregated
things
countries in
happen.
the world. It just happens. You have these large
America's
ghettos.
not
I've actually, I go to
It
the
just happens,
well,
right?
I go to the comedy store in Los Angeles. It's always a completely mixed race audience. I mean, this idea that everything's
course.
segregated is absurd.
Nobody said
Kendi.
everything was
Do you
segregated.
ever go to America?
I never said everything was segregated, but I can promise you there will be.
I've been to the
theatres
theatre
America which are
around
mostly
America.
black.
I've been
Theatres
to
mostly black.
concerts.
Promise you.
I've been to
Absolutely
sport.
promise you.
Always extremely multicultural audiences. This
I know-
idea it's all segregated is for the
This-
birds.
This is
very
what the
misogynistic
victimhood
to use the word
mentality
birds,
brings about. You should not be
I can't use the word
uncomfortable
birds
in a
now, but
space that's full of white
I think
people.
my point is, like, do
because
we
James Barr's offended.
I
because
think
he's misogynist to birds.
My overarching point is, do we believe in safe spaces for marginalised communities? Yes, I do as a queer person. So I see why this is a great idea.
That's simply just not true. Just pull up any stand-up comedy show on YouTube and you'll see that there's people from different racial, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds who came together to enjoy those performances. This diversity is evident in the audience's reaction and the comedians' interactions with the crowd. But I guess facts don't fit the woke left's narrative that perpetuates a victimhood mentality, constantly highlighting historical injustices instead of focusing on the present and future and building on the massive improvements made over the past few decades. Instead of focusing on empowering people, such a mentality contributes to cultivating resentment between them and creates an endless cycle of hate. I think we're at a crucial turning point in our society where we have two possible roads ahead of us. Either focus on embracing and acknowledging our differences and moving forward to build a better society for future generations, or continue these unfruitful debates that will only lead to increased division and fragmentation of society. What are your thoughts on this? Should we hold blackout events more often? Let's get the conversation rolling in the comments down below.